What happens when two global players join forces to control the future of energy? While everyone is focused on oil, a new power struggle is unfolding. Not in the Middle East, but deep within the Earth's crust. And the US, it's watching from the sidelines. Lithium is the lifeblood of the 21st century, a metal so powerful that entire economies will rise or fall based on who controls it. Canada and Europe have just formed a strategic alliance to dominate this critical resource, an alliance that could redefine the global balance of power. This isn't just about batteries for electric cars. This is about who owns the future of energy, technology, and even national security. And here's the shocking truth: if the US doesn't act fast, it risks becoming a spectator in a game that will decide the next economic superpower. The first thing we must understand is why lithium has become the cornerstone of modern civilization. It's not just a metal buried deep within the earth, it is, in many ways, the pulse of our technological future. Every smartphone we hold, every electric vehicle we admire, every renewable energy grid we hope to build relies on this single resource. And unlike oil, which powered the 20th century, lithium represents more than energy. It represents independence, sustainability, and control over tomorrow's economy. Canada and Europe have recognized this reality with clarity and urgency. They see that whoever controls lithium will control the supply chains for electric mobility, energy storage, and even artificial intelligence infrastructure. This is why their alliance is not simply a trade agreement, it is a declaration of strategic intent. It says, "We will not be dependent. We will lead." And that decision changes everything. Now consider the psychological dimension of this move. For decades, nations operated on the belief that energy dominance was tied to fossil fuels. That belief shaped global politics, wars, and economies. But the paradigm has shifted. The mental models that once defined power are obsolete, and those who fail to adjust will find themselves irrelevant. Canada and Europe have not only embraced this shift, they've institutionalized it. They are not waiting for permission from old systems. They are building a new one. Here's the deeper question: why should this matter to you? Because the control of lithium is not just about technology, it's about influence. Whoever owns the resource will write the rules for how it's used, who gets access, and at what cost. It's about shaping the rhythm of global trade and determining which nations thrive and which nations struggle. If Canada and Europe secure this dominance, they position themselves as gatekeepers of a green economy, a role that cannot be ignored. The US, on the other hand, seems hesitant, almost complacent. And in a world moving at lightning speed, hesitation is equivalent to surrender. The future will not wait for those who linger in the comfort of yesterday's power structures. That is why this alliance matters. It's not simply about lithium, it's about vision. And vision, as history repeatedly shows us, always belongs to those willing to act before the rest of the world realizes it's time. So here is the truth that should unsettle us. Control over lithium is not just a question of mining, it's a question of mindset. The nations that think long-term will lead long-term. And right now, Canada and Europe are thinking ahead while others are standing still. If that doesn't change, the balance of power in the global energy transition may already be decided. And the question we must all ask is this: will we be part of the new architecture of power, or will we simply watch others build it? If the first reality is the sheer importance of lithium, the second is about control. And control, in today's context, is no longer confined to land, borders, or military strength. Control has migrated to supply chains, to the invisible networks that connect raw materials to final products. The alliance between Canada and Europe is not a casual partnership. It is a calculated strategy to seize this control and anchor it in a shared vision of sustainability, security, and sovereignty. They understand a fundamental truth in a world racing toward electrification. Whoever masters the supply chain doesn't just participate in the market. They set the terms of engagement. Think about how power has shifted in history. In the industrial age, coal and steel determined which nations could dominate. In the oil era, it was pipelines and reserves. Today, it is not enough to have lithium buried in your soil. The true strength lies in the infrastructure to extract it, refine it, process it, and distribute it without depending on a single vulnerable point of failure. Canada brings something invaluable to this equation: abundant resources combined with political stability and ethical mining practices. Europe, on the other hand, adds advanced technology, innovation in battery manufacturing, and an enormous market hungry for clean energy solutions. Together, they form a closed loop of production and demand that could reshape global trade dynamics for decades. Now, why does this matter on a deeper level? Because the structure of global influence has always been built on dependency. The nations that supply critical resources shape the options available to others. By creating this alliance, Canada and Europe are essentially rewriting the script, reducing dependence on traditional players and, most importantly, insulating themselves from external pressures. This isn't just economics. It's psychology. When you remove dependency, you gain confidence. When you control your own future, you move from a position of reaction to one of command. Contrast that with nations that lack such a strategy. Their choices become limited, their policies dictated by the terms set by others. And that is the silent power of this alliance. It creates autonomy where once there was vulnerability. This is not an aggressive move, it's a defensive one executed with foresight and discipline. They are preparing for a future where lithium isn't just a commodity, but a geopolitical lever, one that will tilt the scales of prosperity and progress. So here's the challenge for the rest of the world. While some are still debating the ethics of electrification, or hesitating on how fast to move, others are building the very framework that will define that future. And the truth is brutally simple. Those who build the system own the system. The question is, do we have the courage to build, or will we simply watch others draw the blueprint of tomorrow, while we remain spectators in our own story? If Canada and Europe are busy shaping the architecture of lithium independence, then we must confront an uncomfortable truth: the United States cannot afford to ignore this movement. It is tempting to believe that dominance in technology or capital will guarantee a permanent seat at the head of the table, but history is unkind to complacency. Power erodes when it assumes its position is secure. And right now, America is standing at a crossroads, not because it lacks resources, but because it risks losing the race of intention. The United States once wrote the rule book for industrial revolutions. From steel to oil to silicon, it led with vision and audacity. Yet, when we look at the lithium economy, the question isn't whether America has access to resources, it's whether America has the will to reimagine its strategy. For decades, the U.S. has operated on a model of global dependence, drawing from international supply chains and leveraging influence to secure its needs. But that model is fragile in an era where alliances are forming to exclude such dependency. Canada and Europe's partnership signals a shift from open dependence to closed cooperation, and that is a language America cannot afford not to speak. What's at stake here is more than economic competitiveness. It's the psychological weight of leadership. Nations that lead don't just supply, they shape narratives, set ethical standards, and dictate pace. If the U.S. steps back, others will step forward. And when that happens, the dialogue of innovation, sustainability, and even morality will no longer be authored in Washington, it will be written elsewhere. That is the quiet danger: losing influence not through conflict, but through irrelevance. This is not about fear, it's about foresight. The world is electrifying faster than policy cycles can keep up. By the time committees debate, others are already executing plans that bind supply chains for decades to come. And here is the deeper insight: control today is not seized with force but with commitment. Those who invest early in refining capabilities, recycling technologies, and ethical sourcing practices will own the conversation tomorrow. So what does America do? It must reclaim its instinct to innovate, not reactively, but preemptively. It must see lithium not as a distant concern, but as a defining pillar of its future economy, woven into national security, environmental responsibility, and technological supremacy. The cost of inaction is not measured in dollars alone, it's measured in influence, in leadership, in the ability to determine your own fate rather than accept terms set by others. Because in this new order, power will belong to those who prepare, not those who assume. And the question is as urgent as it is simply: will the United States lead this revolution? Or will it watch its era of dominance dissolve into history's margins? If there's one thing history teaches us, it's that leadership is never static. It's dynamic, fluid, and brutally honest in rewarding those who adapt while punishing those who hesitate. The lithium race is a perfect illustration of this principle. At its core, this is not just about batteries or electric vehicles, it is about sovereignty in an age where energy defines independence. Canada and Europe understand this truth. They have committed not only to securing resources but to building ecosystems, networks of mining, refining, and innovation that ensure they are not beholden to outside powers. Now, pause for a moment and consider the psychological dimension of this. Leadership is not a title you wear, it is a behavior you embody every single day. When a nation believes it is secure, it begins to slow down. It becomes reactive rather than proactive. That is where the danger lies for the United States. For decades, America has enjoyed dominance built on oil and technology, but the very forces that once secured its position are shifting under its feet. The transition from fossil fuels to electrification is not a trend, it is a transformation. And transformations don't wait for those unwilling to move with them. This brings us to a sobering reality. While the US debates, others act. Canada and Europe are forming an alliance grounded in long-term thinking, a philosophy that values resilience over convenience. They are investing in refining capacities, signing exclusive agreements, and aligning their environmental policies with economic ambition. This isn't mere economics, it's a declaration of intent. It's saying, we will not be dependent. And in a world where dependency equals vulnerability, that is the loudest statement a nation can make. So what happens if America ignores this? It loses more than market share. It loses influence. And influence, once surrendered, is not easily reclaimed. Think of it this way. The rules of the future are being written right now, and those who do not sit at the table will have to live by rules they did not create. That's not just a political disadvantage, it's a philosophical one. It signals a retreat from authorship to obedience, and no nation that aspires to lead the world can afford that posture. The choice, then, is stark. Either America steps into this moment with clarity and conviction, or it drifts into a future defined by others. Because in this century, power will belong to those who secure the flow of energy, not just in barrels or cubic meters, but in kilowatts in supply chains. And if there is one truth to carry forward, it is this: hesitation in times of transformation is not neutrality, it is surrender. Ultimately, the alliance between Canada and Europe is not just a strategy, it's a mindset. It reflects a deep understanding that control over critical resources is not merely an economic advantage, it is a safeguard for the future. And in an era defined by uncertainty, that safeguard is everything. When two major players align their interests, it sends a message to the world: resilience is no longer optional. It is the currency of survival. Think about what this really means. The 21st century will not be remembered for who had the most weapons or even the most oil. It will be remembered for who controlled the flow of clean energy, who built the infrastructure for sustainability, and who dared to lead when the old systems were collapsing. Canada and Europe are not just reacting to a trend, they are rewriting the rules of the global economy. They have recognized that the center of gravity has shifted, and they are moving toward it with purpose and unity. This is where the philosophical layer becomes impossible to ignore. Every alliance, every act of collaboration, begins with a belief that together, we are stronger than apart. That belief is powerful because it reshapes the way nations behave. It changes competition into coordination and rivalry into strategy. For Canada and Europe, this alliance is a manifestation of that belief, a shared vision that extends beyond profit and enters the realm of identity. They are choosing to define themselves not as passive actors, but as architects of the future. Now consider the psychological ripple effect of such a partnership. When other nations witness unity of this scale, they feel the pressure to respond. And this is where the United States faces a defining question. Will it join the movement, or will it cling to old certainties until they dissolve into irrelevance? Because make no mistake, irrelevance is the penalty for inertia. You cannot lead in a world you no longer understand, and you cannot influence rules you refuse to help write. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a truth that is as sharp as it is simple: alliances shape destiny. Whether they are formed between nations, corporations, or individuals, they determine who thrives and who struggles in the new order. Canada and Europe understand this truth. They are acting on it, and in doing so, they are not just securing resources, they are securing the narrative of tomorrow. If there is one lesson to take from this, it is this: the future does not wait for the hesitant. It belongs to those who dare to collaborate, to adapt, and to lead with vision before necessity forces their hand.